Broadcaster Chat. It is now May. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts, joined by Kevin Reichard of Ballpark Digest, and so much more. Kevin, how are you?
I am good, a little bleary-eyed after watching TV and Korean baseball early this morning. So
we'll talk a little bit about that. And also Mick Gillispie, the voice of the Tennessee Smokies. Hi, Mick.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Looking forward to talking some baseball.
Mick, have you spent any time watching KBO, any professional baseball from overseas?
No, I saw where ESPN had that deal where you could watch some games, but me personally, I didn't do it last night. I'll check some out. I'm always curious. I've for a long time had an ambition to go to Japan just to watch baseball. I love the way that they play the game and their passion for it. So I'm hoping to get over there someday. And it's a shame that it's only the KBO right now that we can watch, but we'll take it.
Kevin, you woke up early. Was that the first time that you ever watched a KBO game?
Yes, I am not a KBO veteran by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it's baseball, it's fun, it is time to divert ourselves a little bit. And it was a fascinating broadcast. Did you watch any of it yet?
I did not. I'm struggling with sleep just because of the baby. So when I can get sleep in the evening and then wake up in the morning, I'm a happy person. I'll figure out in terms of the whole early morning life, but right now this baby is sleeping a good 9, 10, 11 hours all the way up until 6:30.
Good.
So we are grabbing that sleep in the middle of the night as we can get it.
Well, and I'll run through it a little bit. It actually was pretty fascinating. On the one hand, it felt a lot like a spring training game, both in terms of talent and the actual experience. I mean, we're talking about, the equivalent of, say, AA to AAA baseball. So the players are good. There's some Americans, these are guys who, the winning pitcher he wasn't the winning, but he was the starting American pitcher for one of the teams was a Orioles farmhand who had like a 5.84 ERA in the majors. So he was not, he wasn't necessarily a big draw for American fans. But it was fascinating because what was on TV last night and what we'll see on ESPN in future days is what we're going to expect from Major League Baseball games. Mostly, maybe not all. No one in the stands, save there was one of the traditional cheerleading squads that Mick sort of alluded to in terms of Japanese baseball. They feature the drums and the trumpets and everything. They were at the game. And then also in some sections, they put up cardboard cutouts of fans' faces. They had a Zoom meeting of fans on the right center field scoreboard. And they had fans outside the ballpark watching in the fences. I'm pretty sure, although I'm not entirely sure, they probably piped in some ballpark ambient sounds as well. I mean, there's no way that little cheerleading squad was making all that noise. But the level of play was fine. A lot more showboating. Those bat flips are prevalent in Korean baseball. And boy, they were bat flipping all the time. But there was one instance that really showed the limitations of having known at the ballpark because there was a home run, right? It curled inside the foul pole. No one really saw it until it bounced away. And so no one thought it was a home run. And then all of a sudden the guy who hit it said, "Oh my gosh, this is a home run." And the ump said, "Yeah, it's a home run." So little slow trot around the bases. But it was also funny because the ESPN commentators were in their home offices. So Carl Ravitch was calling the action from where he was. Then they had, commentators popping in and out. It was surreal, but it's the way we're going to watch baseball in July and beyond if Major League Baseball does indeed start.
Make your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious. I'll have to stay up and watch it or, record it somehow. because I want to see what this looks like. I remember when Baltimore and the White Sox played with no fans, and I've also broadcast games in Jackson, Tennessee, where there's been literally 30 people in the stands and 26 of them are working, whether they're scouts or, people that work for the teams, so I know, like, I've been there before where there's no one at the game. So it's a different experience. I'll tell you that. I mean, it's still baseball, but the people in the stands make just such a big impact on the total experience of being at a sporting event. So it's going to be weird not having it.
Mick, we're going to seize on that point that you just made, and we're going to pursue it later on in this chat. First, about the idea of fans watching through the fences. That's where the term the knothole gang came from. Baseball parks way back in the day where the kids would come up to the ballpark and they try to look right through the knotholes, right through the wooden fences, the outfield walls. In Lansing, we have our fences around the ballpark, but it all is in the midst of the city. It's all downtown. And so people who are just biking around downtown will stop outside the ballpark and they watch the game. And Mick, I know that's something that you've seen, the people who are not in the park, but watching from outside the park.
Yeah, the Smokies, back when they were at Bill Meyer Stadium, had a kids club that was called the Knothole Gang. And I always imagine it being, like you said, like as a kid looking through, maybe you don't have the money to go to the game, but you want to get a glimpse of it, or maybe me as a youngster going to Memorial Stadium and going up the turnstiles and getting to that point where I'm just like peering through like where the stands are kind of like cracked a little bit and, see Ripken and Murray out there practicing and stuff, but being out in center. A lot of stadiums are being built right now where they include that chain link fence. I'm not sure what the difference between having people watch from outside of the fence or watching in the stadium is, but that's I guess that's not for me to decide. I mean, if you're wearing a mask, where does it matter where you're watching? But to me, I'm picturing all these people being, like you were saying, Kevin, like outside of the stadium, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how we can't figure out a way with, how many ever seats, if it's 40,000 seats, to figure out a way that people could go watch the game there. I mean, there's enough room where you could do it. And maybe you require people to wear a mask. I don't know, but I'm definitely curious to see, how this is going to affect the Major League game, if we can even get the Major League game playing again because of the amount of politics that I feel like are involved in this. It's not it's a national thing, but it's also a state thing. And every single state that's the way that our country's set up, right? And I mean, I love it that way, that we're different, but you can definitely tell the difference between your state. We're all in 3 different states right now. And I guarantee you that each one of us has a very, very different approach. Matter of fact, I know that. Like, your state, Jesse, it's like, if you go outside there, right, they throw you in jail. Here we're like, basically the process is going. Like, people are, you're going back to work now, and I don't know as much about Wisconsin, other than my cousin lives near you, Kevin. But I mean, like, I haven't heard as much about that, but Tennessee's been very vocal on one side and Wisconsin's been very vocal on the other, as far as, like just the way that they're approaching this thing. So I just wonder how baseball, when you tie it back in, is going to be able to have like all of these people that are so different politically, with different motivations, different fears, come together, if they even want to have baseball. Because I'm hearing that they're going to try to play games in the home team stadium. I just don't see it happening. I don't know, man. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, I think it's going to be a financial decision, quite honestly. If they figure that they can put on the games and receive enough ESPN/TBS/MLB money, then they're going to want to go with it. But you're right. The state statuses are just a hodgepodge. I mean, I think in general, you're going to see, states have their ranked sets of openings, stage 1, whatever. Stage 4 in almost every state is crowds, whether it be a ballpark, whether it be a football stadium, right, whether it be an arena. We're barely in stage 1 in some places. Wisconsin's not opened up, although some things are open. My dogs can get a haircut. I can't, but you look at, say, in Montana, they're opening bars already. You look at California, they're in their stage 1, and they are barely in their stage 1. I think this probably has more impact on the minor league schedule than the major league, because they can play games without fans and be financially revenue producing. Minor league teams just can't do it.
I don't even think there's an appetite for minor league baseball.
From
the big league teams. I just don't think that they care. I feel like the commissioner's office is using this as an opportunity to win this entire battle with minor league baseball right now. I mean, I hate to say that, but half of our office got furloughed yesterday, including me, first time in my life, and I'm like, I'm having to come to that realization because I'm an optimist. I mean, you guys know that. Like, I'm constantly like, hey, look on the bright side. I never thought that we would get to this point. But, when you look at it through the financial prism, it's like, first off, you have the whole minor league, major league contract battle that is going on right now. We want to contract 42 teams. They want to get rid of the minor league baseball office, which honestly I have no problem with at all. I didn't even know there was one with 50 people there. Like what they do doesn't impact us at all. I don't feel like, it's probably a big waste of money anyway, but they want to do that. They want to get rid of 42 teams, which I'm definitely adamantly against that idea. And it's partly because I just don't want to see the game shrink. But then with the virus, like you're trying to get, do you really even want to get games going? Because who's going to lose money in this? Are the players going to take a pay cut, right? Well, the owners are, because if you do games without fans, guess what? You're not making money, right? Or at least you're not making as much money. And I'm just curious to see how they work out the financials on this, because the owners are taking a big hit right now. They also have the responsibility of paying all these employees, people like me, right? And then, like, the Cubs have said, hey, we're going to pay everyone up until May 31st. Like, for the players, like, they make half the money, and it's like, where's their blood in this? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking. I mean, maybe they have like some kind of investment that I just don't know about. But if I'm the owners, like, do I really want to jump back into games where there's no one there to buy the product? Is the TV money that good? Or do the players come to the table and say, hey, you know what, we'll take this, because all of us are taking a hit right now. The owners, us, the sponsors, everybody's taking a hit. What's the players' hit going to be? That's where I'm wondering how you negotiate this. And I'm talking about their union, because if I own a team and I'm making less money, why would I want to pay my partner the same amount of money that they were getting paid, even though they're performing the same exact task? The money's just different now. So I don't know. I'm starting to hear people say that maybe by July, but I just don't know. Is the TV money that good? Do you guys know? Do you follow me here?
Nick, I think that the TV money is that good. And I think that because fans are so starved for baseball that people are saying, I will wake up in the middle of the night to watch the KBO. I think that owners are saying, and TV networks like ESPN and all the different sports networks locally in the big cities are saying whatever that they can do to put that baseball, to put their team on for people who are stuck in their houses who need the games to watch, they want to do it. But to circle back around to where you started, if the state, if the governor, if the people in charge of the politics won't let you, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind first is how wrestling got the governor of Florida to declare them an essential business so professional wrestling could continue in Florida. The Major League Baseball is simply saying, we will find governors who will say yes, and that way we can put on games.
I mean, I hope that's the case. I mean, like, honestly, New York and New Jersey have been really the only two places in this country that have had this thing that everyone sold us on when we gave up our jobs and went into our houses 7 weeks ago. You know, I know that it was in New Orleans a little bit, Michigan a little bit, but I mean, I'm talking about like, you know, like this mass hysteria where I would be, you know, scared senseless too, you know. And I talked to my buddy Justin, who works for the Yankees, and he's like, hey man, it's you know, this person died and that person died, and I don't know anyone that died. I don't even know anyone that has it. Like, I know you do, Jesse. I don't, you know, like, and I know a lot of people. I don't know anyone, but I don't live in New York City either, you know, like, so I get it. Like, there's a fear factor here. And then like they said, well, maybe it's coming back, you know. I just don't know. And then when I see what's going on, and so, like, I saw a couple get attacked by the police in New York yesterday for walking outside, and I see like California where they have this list of rules, you know, like you can see the sunset or rise, but you can't do both. You can go outside and throw a baseball, but not in a group, you know. Like, I just don't know how you get from that to playing Major League Baseball in some of these places, you know. I mean, I just don't. And part of it too is, you know, like I said before, the politics that's involved in this. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you got financials, you got politics. Is it an essential business? You know, do they? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm glad that we're talking about playing baseball because it is great that the fans actually have something to watch. But I'm even kind of wondering, when you say that, like, when's the last time baseball did anything that was geared towards the fans? I mean, I feel like every time they make a decision, it's like, okay, we're doing this because it makes more money. I mean, when's the last time it's been like, well, we're going to do this? It's not like the NFL constantly makes decisions that are good for the fans. Do you guys feel like that? Like, it's like, hey, we're going to make this salary cap. We're going to make the teams, just trying to make them as even as possible. You know, we're going to do a television deal where you can watch all the teams play. You know, like they make a lot more decisions that are better for the group. And I feel like Major League Baseball is like, every time I turn around, I say, hey, this isn't good for us. You know, so, I mean, I would love to say, hey, they really have this incentive out there that is fan-based. But, I mean, you know, I am a cynic when it comes to that, because it just seems like every time they make a decision, it's like dollar bills based. I mean, is it good to eliminate 42 teams that you have in markets where the communities have paid for these teams to have stadiums, and, you know, people have invested millions of dollars into Major League Baseball and their teams? No. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. And I mean, maybe you can name a few things that have been fan-centric, but I don't know. Like, you know, you want a video of the game that you watched last night, a highlight. Major League Baseball, don't ask them, because they're not putting it out unless someone pays for it, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, would it be better for the game if those highlights were out for everybody to see? Would it grow the game? Yes, but that's not what we do.
Johnny Boy gets a whole lot of highlights out there, so I'm not entirely sure that there's well, whatever, he gets them out there, and they've not cut them off yet. And if you follow Twitter, there's actually a lot of highlights out there. You know, ESPN just did a poll among both sports fans and casual fans, and the vast majority of both want baseball to come back, and they don't mind at all that it's coming back without anyone in the stands. They just want to see the action. So, you know, I think on the one hand, this is definitely rooted in money in bringing back the season, but on the other hand, I think there's a great demand for it. And
so,
I should underestimate that demand.
That brings us back to that central point of baseball without fans. And the question that was asked entering this podcast today was the origin of the term fan compared to the origin of the term crank, and when did one replace the other? So before we come right back to 2020, just to take a trip quickly back in the past, I grabbed my game of inches just to answer this question in terms of crank and fan. So all you got to do is go back to 1881. That's it. Charles Guiteau assassinated President James Garfield, and he was called a crank. And that put the term crank into popular jargon. Who is a crank? A crank is somebody who's deranged and obsessed. And so you take this term of someone who is deranged and obsessed enough to try to assassinate the President of the United States. And then it was applied to people who are deranged and obsessed about their local baseball team. Same thing with the term fan. Chris Vanderay, the St. Louis owner, the man who owned a tavern up the street and cared nothing about baseball, but realized every time there was a baseball game, there were a ton of baseball cranks who were coming in and buying his beer, said, I need to start owning a baseball team so I can sell more beer. He really brought the term fan and fanatic in. And I found a newspaper article about this back in the 19th century. Ted Sullivan claimed to be the inventor, and this is once again in St. Louis, working through Chris Vanderay, the great owner who brought so many different innovations. Another quick Vanderay story. He brought fireworks to baseball. If it was a bad weather day and people were thinking about staying home, as Mick, you and I know, if it looks like rain, fans will say, there's no baseball game. And how do we convince them to come? He shot fireworks off, or at the very least, he announced that he would shoot fireworks off. So you would hear the explosion and say, St. Louis is still playing baseball today. From St. Louis, it spread to Cincinnati, and it was the sports writer Ren Mulford Jr. who is really credited with popularizing fans that it overtook crank. So off we go from St. Louis and Ted Sullivan and Chris Vanderay to Ren Mulford Jr., who's writing and everyone's reading, and he's calling everyone fans, fanatics. And so crank no longer really exists except for people who know that term way back in the day. And now we just call people fans. And I would say, and Mick and Kevin, you can come up with your own more recent terms. But if I was asked to describe a baseball fanatic right now, people who really care and live and die, most recent term I've heard coined is seamhead, that people are called seamheads. Any other terms come to your minds?
No, I love the term seamhead, actually. I think that sums it up so well. And I think it also recognizes the fact that there's different levels of baseball lover and why you love it. You know, I go to a game to relax, I got to admit. I don't go to keep score, you know, and a vast majority of the time, I don't go even caring who wins. But I love the experience, I love the crowd, and I love just watching the game being played the same way it's been for decades and decades and decades. But I'm guessing the two of you who go to far more games than I do actually see different types of fans and interact with them in probably very much more interesting ways.
And Mick, I want to jump in because you and I have talked in the past about how in the minor leagues, people don't go to see the players. Or right. Chris Bryant, you told the Chris Bryant stories.
Not as much, yeah, right.
So I'm going to separate the people who come to have a good time. I'm going to say the baseball fans, the people who in Korea, they're watching from outside or they're watching on TV, or all the people who woke up at whatever time of the morning to watch the game. Let's talk about baseball fans and what the sport of baseball being played without fans, how that would affect the game.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love the game. I mean, like, I love it. Like, I'd say it's my first love. Like, I can remember being in school and, like, looking at the clock in math class and not paying attention to anything and, like, reliving a situation that had happened in my game the night before, or something that happened in the Cubs or the Orioles game during the day, or how I needed to get home to be able to watch the Cubs. You know, like, when I got off the bus, I needed to go, not do anything, get straight home to watch baseball, you know, like, reading about baseball. I had no idea at the time that, like, you know, like you could, that school would really lead you to baseball, which I wish, you know. Yeah, I just didn't know. You know, and I tell people that now. I talk to groups of kids. I'm like, you know, you need that math. You need that English and those, you know, the anatomy and the Spanish and all that stuff for the game. But I absolutely love the game. And me personally, my godson came to Pigeon Forge last year. He was on a travel team, and they were, like, really good, one of the best teams in the Mid-Atlantic. And I went and watched them play, and, like, the other team, and they were so. I enjoyed it, and there were no fans there. I mean, just the parents, you know. But like if I see like a game going on and it's played the right way, I just get into it. Like I can't really even tell you why. Like it's really like kind of like a sensation. Like I'll jog, and if I see like a game, like I got to stop and just kind of analyze like what's going on right there, you know. And I feel like the same thing with you know, with the minor leagues. Like when you see those really great players, like there's almost like a kind of this moment where you're like, man, this guy's really good, and it's exciting, you know. The game's going to be great if they play it without players. What my point was before is that it's just become so much about money from the players union and from the owners that I guess I'm just cynical when it comes to the motivation to do anything for us, the people that just want to watch the game, you know. But I hope I'm wrong, because you're right. Everybody is just dying for live baseball right now. I mean, we'll take anything. I'll give you a story. It's not a baseball story. Everyone that got furloughed, we all hung out last night, the furloughed crew, and they're in the same complex as me here. And I went down there, and they're watching, this is true, juggling dodgeball. You got jugglers on one side and dodgeball throwers on the other. And I'm like, this stinks. And I mean, like, I don't want to watch juggling dodgeball, right? But it's live sports. Like, everybody's like, just please bring baseball back. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I've not been sucked into the esports, weird sports programming that's going on right now. I too am just like you. I just want the baseball back in some form. And one thing I should note in our discussion that I missed out, you know, the Japanese league is back in action as well. They're playing in front of fans. They have received permission to allow, I believe, 250 fans into the ballpark soon, and they are also looking at upping that to 1,000, which makes no difference financially whatsoever. But if they're the right 250 people, certainly can add a lot of ambiance to the action, especially since you're going to see about 20 ballpark mics near them. So it'll be more of a spectacle than it is right now. And they're playing, you know, without fans, and it's the same, better quality of play than Korea. You know, you see the highlights. But I'm with you. I would rather. I'm disappointed it's going to happen without fans, but I suspect we're going to see ballparks without fans beyond just a rumored July opening, you know. And that's what I keep hearing from people is, you know, July 4th weekend, maybe July 1st, we may see those first games without fans there.
Can I tell you my suspicion? So I think that right now fans need baseball. And the baseball players need baseball, and the owners need baseball, and people need baseball for their own specific reason. There's the great book about Buck O'Neill called The Soul of Baseball, about Buck being the soul. Let me just extrapolate this aside. I would argue that fans are the soul of baseball. And I think that, let's say baseball starts up in empty stadiums here. We would enjoy it immediately. But after a while, we would miss something. And there was talk about canned crowd noise. So here's what I would argue. I would argue that when fans are allowed to come back into the games and fill the stadiums up, however many, you know who's going to love it the most will be the players.
Yeah.
The players will love looking around and seeing the fans and hearing the fans cheer. I think that this is going to really show the players how important the fans are to the game.
I hope so.
They interviewed
Kevin.
That's okay. You know, Dan Straley, who started that game last night, he was interviewed about the lack of fan noise. He said at first it was a little creepy being out there with nothing going on. And he said, but after a little bit, after 3 or 4 pitches, it felt like a normal game to him. And so many of the players do tune out the fan noise anyway as their focus. But I don't know how sustainable that will be.
How many athletes work off of adrenaline? How many athletes, it's the fans who pick you up. Otherwise, basically, it's just you on the backfields.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I hope that the players, when we do have it back to normal, you know, where you go to the game and there's a ton of fans, appreciate the fans a little bit more. Because, I mean, just me personally, I've talked about this so many times. I've just seen this steady decline from the players when it comes to just respect for the people that are actually out there paying for the tickets. And I think it's more of a cultural thing, you know. I don't think it's just like, hey, look, this team or that team, you know. It's like part of it's the travel ball environment, and, you know, kind of that our game has become more upper crust. You know, minus you know, the Venezuelans and the Dominican players, which I feel like for me personally grew up more like me than a lot of the guys that I've seen go through and become big leaguers, you know. And it's like when your parents are the ones that are struggling to pay the $20 to go watch a game, you know, when you're a kid or whatever it is, now it's hundreds. You have an appreciation for what it takes to go to the game, to pay for parking, to pay for the hot dogs and the tickets and to be there, you know. When you grow up affluent, you know what, there's a chance that you probably have no clue that it's expensive. You know, I've got guys, and I like these guys. I'm not saying it's a personal attack, but you know, I've had players that grew up going to every game that they wanted to, sitting in luxury boxes and then playing their own games on the weekend, you know, like and I feel like that's become more of the norm, you know, than kind of like, well, this guy got to do this, you know. No, I mean, the game's become a very upper crust game, and I've just seen it. I've complained about this and tried to preach to the coaches and stuff, you know, like, hey, man, like, we have to instill an appreciation for the people that are paying for us to have this lifestyle that we live, you know. And I mean, like, this is, and having these games without fans is a great way to illustrate that, because even I had no clue what the impact would be when I'm watching WrestleMania and there's no fans, or you try to watch Monday Nitro or Monday Night Raw and there's no fans. Like, it is such a big difference. It's such a big difference. Like, I'm going to have to watch the KBO just to get an idea of what that feeling must be like when you're watching and it's like a home run and like not, and you're listening to the dugout clap. It'd be like women's softball, you know, like when you watch the softball games and like, you know, some of them are on ESPN and there's like no one in the stands except and the girls are going crazy and they're like, but it's just not the same, you know? So, I mean, I hope that, you know, what you're saying, I mean, I just hope that when we come back, we just have a greater appreciation for the mom and dad that are busting their butts to be able to take their kids to the games, you know? And, you know, and it's like, look, if you can sign a couple of autographs, if you can take a selfie with someone, do it. Babe Ruth did it. And look at Babe Ruth. I mean, why is Babe Ruth a legend, guys? Because what are the stories you hear about the Babe? Like, you read them, Jesse. I read them on the air. It's like, you know, he's hanging out with the guy that caught his 600th home run.
The kid in the hospital that he's promising he's going to go deep for.
Yeah. Like, not only did he bought the home run from the guy that had a 600 home run. Like, Babe was like his uncle after that. Like, come to Detroit and hang out with him and everything. You know, it's like, the guy, like, they didn't take themselves so seriously that it was like, hey, look, we really don't care about, you know, what's going on. And I don't want to, you know, single anybody out, but I've got more stories that I'm not going to say here, but that just kind of illustrate, you know, from talking to people that I know that work for different teams, front offices, and they're trying to sell advertising and they're trying to do this and that, and they're not getting a lot of cooperation from the players. I hope that changes.
We can alternate telling stories. Here, you had talked about being a young fan, Nick. All three of us are enormous baseball fans. I was raised to be a baseball fan by my father. I got a baseball glove when I was in the crib. I became a soccer fan because I was taken at an impressionable age to an Ecuador-Brazil game in Washington, D.C., and the crowd was loud. So I might not have understood what I saw, but the people around me made it seem special. I became a hockey fan because the very first hockey game I ever saw, I was brought to a playoff Washington Capitals Pittsburgh Penguins Game 7. I was fortunate, but being there and feeling that, I couldn't help but love this game because it was that exciting. I went to my first baseball playoff game. It was Cleveland Yankees. It was game 5 at Progressive Field. And the fact that everybody was hanging on every pitch. The pitcher would throw ball 1 for the Indians, and the crowd would boo, and it was the top of the 3rd inning, and it was great. So it's important to have baseball back. But, the importance of fans, the importance of the feel that you get, and it extends through the TV. When the Orioles were good a couple of years ago and Camden Yards was rocking, it extended. When Toronto was good a couple of years ago and Rogers Center was so loud, that when the Oakland A's have been good, Oakland has been such a good atmosphere, and you don't even have to care about the A's to turn on an Oakland postseason game, and you feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the baseball without fans, I hope, will be as short-lived as possible. Play an 80-game season this year, and then move on to next year.
Let me tell a fan story. Because as over the course of this, you never know what stories suddenly get triggered. Thirsty Thursday in Lansing. So the crowd is liquidly energized and is letting themselves be heard to the visiting Kane County Cougars. Specifically, the crowd in left field hanging out over the left field wall, shouting at their left fielder. Suddenly in the middle innings, a guy shows up wearing a Kane County Cougars zip-up jacket. Shows up in the thick of those fans out beyond the left field wall. He has a bunch of 20s in his hand, and he says, "This is from the left fielder. Could you cheer him on the rest of the game? He's buying drinks for everybody." And then the reliever leaves, goes right back to the bullpen, and the entire rest of this game in Lansing, this crowd cheered every fly ball he caught. If he came up to home plate, they were on his side. It was amazing.
Hey, that's a good way to make
getting
friends.
Into the spirit of the game. Yeah. Nothing like buying a beer at a game for someone to endear them forever to you.
Wasn't it Jeff Francoeur who did the same thing for fans?
He did. And you'll occasionally hear about it happening in bullpens as well. Not as dramatic as your story though, Jesse.
It's just delightful. The relationship between crowd and player. Mick, you talked about the players who they've lost that. But you can still see, and you've seen those players, you can spot those players here or there who they understand and it means something to them, that somebody cheering for them or to sign an autograph, whatever that little gesture might be, it means something to the fan. You can see that it means something to the player.
Yeah, I mean, and like I was hosting a Cubs panel at Cubs convention a couple of years ago, and the way that they had organized it that particular year was they had, the main hall, or hotel where they did events you could buy a ticket to. But if you were a season ticket holder, you had your own area, And so I was hosting in there, and it was a bullpen session. So it was like the season ticket holders and some of the guys who were in the Cubs bullpen. And it was really awesome to see the connection that some of the players had with some of the fans. Like some of the fans would bring like snacks to the bullpen. We had a guy, Justin Grimmer, just a great guy. Never took himself too seriously, and like the connection that he had with the fans in there, like was genuine. Like I'm talking to him after, he's like, "Oh yeah, I love, she brings me, this and that. And we talk about this." And that was before they moved the bullpen behind the outfield wall, which when they expanded the stadium. But I mean, like, I love that, like I love it when I see the fans like step out of this, like, like, okay, well, I'm special because I'm a player. We are special because you're a player. I mean, no doubt about it, but they're special because they're giving us their money to watch you play a game. It's like, and what we're finding out now is like, we miss the game, but we're still like living here. You know what I mean? Like it's not essential. Like as much as we love it, it's not essential. And so that's what my whole point is. It's like, look, I'm an awkward person sometimes if I don't know someone and they want to come up and meet me, and it's because I'm just insecure with myself. I just don't know what to say, like all the time. But I mean, you could probably answer the way that you do it, but I always take the time, and I always will take the time. Chuck Thompson took the time for me. He's a Hall of Famer, so like if he can do that for some guy he just met off the street, it's like, we take, people take us into their homes with them every night, because we're on the radio for 3 hours and they feel like they know us and they'll come in. But it's not always easy, but it's part of the job. And I just hope that that we see like the players kind of have this renewed sense of appreciation for the fans again. And we get more stories like the Cubs bullpen, at the thing, like it's, Cubs convention, and like you're saying, it's like they're so special, man. Like not just the money part of it, but just the enthusiasm, the love of the game, like the energy that they bring, and it's such a part of us three here and a lot of people watching our lives too. Like just the watching the game, the chess match that goes along with it, the fact that they've been playing this game. It's different than football and basketball to me because we care about the stats and the history so much too. Not having it right now, like yesterday I was at the stadium and it's like a perfect day. It's crazy, right? It's just crazy. So I hope when they come back, I know me, I'm going to be kissing every single fan I see. I'm buying drinks for the bleachers if I work for Marquee, like if it works out where I'm filling in, drinks on me, promise.
Mick, going down a couple of levels in the Cubs system, the South Bend Cubs have something worked out, a deal worked out with a local senior citizen center that there are players who stay there during the season. That's we think about host family housing. It's senior citizen center and host family housing. So the players who stay there, basically the senior citizens adopt them, and they have such a good relationship over the course of a summer.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very cool.
I've got my baseball thesaurus right here, and I open it up to the fans. So we mentioned a couple of the terms: crank, fanatic. There's rooter and gatecrasher and the knothole gang, die hard, seam heads. Here's another one for you: boosters. And that really has been taken by booster clubs.
Yeah.
Have you worked with some good booster clubs over the years?
I haven't, but I wish I had, because I'll go in other places. I got my Jacksonville shirt on when their booster club like supplies everybody with snacks and stuff like that. I'm always like, whoa, I wish I was here. I would love to have some snacks, like what bring me something, they're a really good booster club there.
My baby has a Dayton Dragons onesie from the Dayton Dragons Booster Club.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And that's a term that's changed over time. I mean, now it's more a community-based group, but if you go back in the history of it, remember, Jesse, the rooters and the boosters, the
Royal Rooters, yeah.
The Royal Rooters, that's right. And that was more a business club. That was not a community club, really. But they would show up at away games. They would cheer on their boys no matter what. But yeah, I love the Royal Rooters and the whole Rooters tradition in old style baseball.
So the Royal Rooters, and I'm going right into the book because I actually made a specific section about groups of fans. The Royal Rooters were Boston Red Sox fans in the early part of the 20th century. Meanwhile, there was Rooters Row, who were a group of Cincinnati Reds superfans at the Palace of the Fans from 1902 to 1911. Meanwhile, the Boston Braves had an incredible booster club. The Bleacher Creatures were the Tiger Stadium's fanatics who hung out in the bleachers. Same thing with Yankee Stadium and the Bleacher Creatures. And Mick, let me throw this to you. How about the Cubs Bleacher Bums?
Yeah. I think of them like I was on a Bleacher Bum podcast a couple nights ago, and I said, look, when and if I make my debut, I'm buying beers for everybody before the game. They said, well, there's a lot of people out there. And I said, well, maybe just your crew. They're awesome, though. Like, Tom Ricketts met his wife, I think, at a Cubs game in the bleachers. Like, it's a special place. Last time I went, season's over. it was at the end of the Cubs season. Smoky season's over, end of the Cubs season. Might have been the last game or one of them anyway. I'm out there, and I see, here comes Mike Lafrano, who works for the Cubs front office. I'm like, hey, Mike. And they're like, he's really not stopping to talk to me. And then I realized he's got Theo Epstein with him in a disguise. Like, Theo's got his hat pulled down. He's got, like, a beard. He's walking, wherever they're going to sit. Like, it was so funny. Like, and I'm like, okay. Even the front office is like, look, sometimes you just got to get back to why you do this and why you love this, and just be a fan again, like the season was pretty much determined at that point, the playoff positioning and all that stuff, I thought that was really cool, even, and Theo was in disguise, but not a good enough disguise because I saw him right away. Now, I didn't recognize Mike Lafrano and some of the other people that were out there that day, but that's what the bleachers are all about at Wrigley. You just never know who's going to show up, and it's going to be pretty wild.
The community, and this gets back to fans actually being in the ballpark. It's not you on your couch communicating with friends here, friends there. It's everybody together in the bleachers, and you are together. You bond together with your love over the Cubs. Here's the Windy City Thunderbolts play out of Crestwood, so South Side. I broadcasted for them in 2008. If you've never seen their ballpark, they started to build it with an upper deck on both sides. So they completed the upper deck down the left side. Then as they started to build it to the right, they realized there were high tension power lines running through. It was unsafe, so they stopped. So it is half an upper deck, but they have the poles in place to complete it. While I was there, the super fans, the amazing group of drunk baseball fanatics, hung out at the pole and called themselves the Pole Guys. And they all had Pole Guy shirts, and they gave out Pole Guy shirts to anybody who was an honorary Pole Guy. That year, we had a great pitcher. So his wife would go over and hang out with him while he was pitching, and they gave her a shirt. They had a baby. They gave the baby a Pole Baby shirt, and they would just shout the worst things they could think of. There was a manager for another team in the league, our arch rival, who clearly, he had hair, but it was not his own hair. And so when he went out to home plate to deliver the lineup card at the start of one game, all the Pole Guys threw toupees at him. And there comes a shower of toupees from the right side pole. Just sensational. And the life that they brought to the game, it was good to be a Thunderbolt, and it was bad to be playing against us. And it was great home field advantage.
Hey, who do you think if you had to say the most famous fan that you can remember? I've got the answer here. You may know who I'm talking about, but I want you to tell me first. Who's the most famous fan that you remember?
Okay.
Major League history.
I'm not going to even name it. I'm just going to do this. Are you ready?
Yes, I know you know who I'm talking about. Yep, that's it. Yep, Wild Bill Hagy. Right? A cab driver in Baltimore. This guy you would come to the games, and Jesse and I are from the same area, right? And we used to go to Oriole games growing up. Like, he was in section 34 in the upper deck. And back then at Memorial Stadium, he could bring his own beer in, So he was drunk. He was a cab driver by day and an Oriole fan by night. And I mean, like, the guy was on TV all the time. He did the Orioles cheers the entire game. Had this big cowboy hat with all the pins on it, a big bright orange Oriole shirt. There's a Sports Illustrated that has him doing the Oriole spell out, right? It folds out. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Like, he is that famous, this guy. And I mean, like, the stories are like, you're not going to believe it. I remember this as a kid. You're not going to believe it. I took a cab the other day, and it was Wild Bill that was the cab driver. And he was like when I think about going to games as a kid, like, he was as much of an attraction as those Orioles that were so good, in the 80s. Like I wanted to see Wild Bill. Like, it was like this. I got to see this guy. You see him in person, like the whole stadium. Like, it would start over there, and then it would just echo. Like, I think he also started this thing that some people find disrespectful. You know what I'm talking about here? I don't think it's disrespectful, but some people do. I mean, we do live in a society where there's a lot of people that get offended on stuff. If you listen to a game and the Orioles are playing, right, and they sing the national anthem, when they get to the O in the song, everybody in the stadium yells, "Oh." And so, I mean, look, there's people that just don't like that, right? But if you go to a game in Baltimore or the Orioles are playing, I don't care where they are. I was in Atlanta and I saw them do this. And I do it too. Like, I'm yelling, "Oh," like, "Oh," you know, like he started that. Like, you think about that. Like, this guy started, and we're still doing it. Like, I'm sure he's been dead since the 90s, right? He didn't go to Camden Yards much because they priced it out of it. But if you were at Memorial Stadium, this guy was like as famous of a fan, not just in Baltimore, but if you watched baseball back then, you knew who Wild Bill Hagy was. Am I right?
Passed away 2007.
Okay, so he lived a little longer than I thought. A lot of natty bows here.
With all due respect, I would say today's most famous baseball fan is Marlins man.
I knew you were going to say that, but he does.
The
But he's
most
not even
promoting
close.
baseball fan that is. I think John
Overrated.
Adams deserves that name, the genuine crown.
Yes.
Who's
And
that?
let's go back to Ronny Woo Woo.
Yeah, Ronny
as
Woo.
someone
I know
who was
Ronny.
utterly
Yeah,
sincere. I love Ronny Woo. I went
do
to
too.
I went to a ho-ho camp game with him. Walked the outfield with him. He was, in his Cubs uniform, looking
Always.
for money to get his teeth fixed. But he was adored. He was surrounded all the time. John Adams in Cleveland gets that. I mean, we can go back to Hilda Chester as a great super fan for that.
Oh man.
Who was the kissing bandit? That's, who he's
Montana.
talking about. That's a super fan if I've ever seen one before.
And there's one in Milwaukee. She's always sitting by home plate, and then she'll go up to Appleton for Timber Rattlers games that are on TV. And I still don't know her angle. I've never really had it adequately presented to me why she was such a fixture on TV to drive all the way to Appleton for a Timber Rattlers game just so she could be in the local broadcast. But
Amy Williams, front row Amy.
yes, front row Amy.
Mhm.
So they're all around. I don't think teams like them as much as they used to.
No.
Well,
Hey, look.
do you know if the Orioles liked Wild Bill or did they just tolerate him? Like, I hope that they loved him, but were there people who were annoyed by him at Memorial Stadium? Were there, and I mean people in the front office?
Yeah, I guarantee it.
I'm sure there.
And what happens is I think there's a couple things. Like, when I got to school at Alabama, the baseball team was really good, and they had this guy, they called him Superfan. And he was like, I've even got a video that I made as a student of this guy. Like, his big performance came with the Cotton Eye Joe that they would play between like the 6th and 7th inning, and the guy would had a whole dance routine, and you could not watch it. I mean, it was just so ridiculous, but I loved it. And then it got to the point where he wanted a free ticket every day, and he wouldn't follow the rules, and he became entitled, and they got tired of him, and that was it, and it's a shame because it was really a fun, kind of thing to add to the games, and I'm sure that was probably the same thing for the Orioles. It's like it's a business, part of the business is they want you to buy the beer that they sell, right? I mean, that's kind of part of the business, Wild Bill was not doing that, because you can't go to the stadium and get your 25 ice cold natty bows for $4.99. It just doesn't work that way. But I hate that part of things. It's a shame that there couldn't have been a compromise made, to keep this guy out there, because it wasn't the same. You start to lose those people that are the baseball eccentrics, like the super fans, you go and then all of a sudden they're not there, and there's a part of the whole experience that disappears, and I just hate that, because look, I'm just a guy that wants to sit in the outfield if I'm not on the air and drink a beer and watch the game. Just a fan. I'm a fan of the game. I'm not a fan of the players. I'm a fan of the game. I'm not a fan of the owners. I'm just a fan of the game. You know what I mean? I appreciate everyone's contribution, but not overly appreciate anyone's, you know? And I just feel like it's been like this. It's gotten so just polarized, you know, like baseball. It's just, and I hope that this whole experience brings us all back together again. You know, it's like, because between the juice balls and the, you know, and the contraction, and I mean, like every time you took the team that won the World Series cheated and we didn't do anything to the players about it. Like there's a lot of things that kind of hurt the game that we love, that we dedicate our life to, right? And I hope that this is like the thing, maybe this is like a negative, but it brings us all back together again.
On that note, Kevin, any final thoughts?
Absolutely none. I think Mick summed it up really well. You know, I think in these terrible times, we've got to remember back to 9/11, it was baseball that helped bring the nation back together. And I think there's a real good chance that broadcast baseball, even without a single fan in sight, can help do that now.
He's Kevin Reichard. For Mick Gillispie, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This has been the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.